All right, this is a 2000 Polaris Xpedition 425 4x4 that I recently inherited from my dad. It has some issues with the drive shaft and the spline gear going into the rear differential, the pinion, that shaft and the coupling that ties it to the drive shaft is stripped. There's a few other issues that I'm working on. I've got about $900 worth of parts in it so far. The motor sounds pretty good. We'll go ahead and start that. The choke lever was broke off. I got a new one ordered and installed here. This instrument cluster, the bracket, is bent, so I got a new one of those. I'll put that on. The ignition, the nut that retains the ignition to the instrument cluster is missing. So I went ahead and just bought a whole new ignition. Came with 2 keys and this rubber drama piece for waterproofing. It was broken down. So I got the whole ignition with 2 keys plus that nut that I was missing for $10 or $11. So I'll put that on. Otherwise, the motor, the transmission's pretty good. Just like I said, the drive shaft and the pinion spline system is rusted and rounded over. And I'll show you that. So here's a mix of the new and the old parts. So this is the pinion, bevel gear, a bearing, and then a nut that goes into the rear differential. And these splines here are heavily worn. And really the issue was this coupling that's supposed to have spline teeth in it to engage the spline shaft had spun. And so there was no power going to the rear wheels. Now it would go in 4-wheel drive because the front 2 wheels would power it, but so this part definitely bad. Now since this was my dad and the bike is somewhat sentimental, he owned it. He's the second owner of this. It's got about 5,500 miles on it and 660 hours. And I think he acquired it maybe back in 2004 or 5, and he's owned it since, so about 16 years, and he's used it to go fishing and trapping with my brother and hunting and so forth. So he's used it quite a bit, and it's sentimental, and I kind of want to, not just cobble it back together. I want to fix it as best I can. So I got this. This was about $40 for a new coupling. And I could have just, installed that and went about my business, but there's certainly some play, some slop there because these spline teeth aren't in very good shape. They're rusted. They're a little bit rounded over as well. And there's a grease fitting which I've taken out. I have it, the little grease zerk here. It was meant to be greased. In fact, there's an O-ring gland right in here so that the grease would go in there and then kind of flow where you wanted it to and be retained. But it probably never got greased its entire life except when it was new from the factory. And the reason why is because it's not real easy to get to. This is where the drive shaft goes. Rear differential sits right here, so that pinion gear and spline shaft sits about right here. And that grease zerk, it's probably pretty difficult to get to, but you can probably get to it either from here or the hole that's on the bottom if the drive shaft is at just the right angle. So there you can see the splined shaft coming right out of the back of the motor and transmission there, and then you have the drive shaft That coupling is up inside here, then the pinion, rear diff, and then the axle that I've taken off here. So this is the pinion cover. There's a seal in there that I'm looking to replace. I ordered a new one. And then inside here, you've got a bushing that the pinion, the back end of the pinion fits in, and then you can see the ring gear as well. And then the bearing cup OD sits in this area here. It's a slip fit, pretty tight tolerance, but it is a slip fit here, slip fit down inside that bushing. And so that's kind of that. So I'll get this new instrument cluster bracket that's not bent, get that installed. We'll get the new ignition installed. The other issue, I guess maybe it really wasn't an issue, but my dad was a big guy and he had a cargo thing kind of bolted here to the back that dropped down and you could put heavy things on it. It didn't have a lot of suspension, a lot of stiffness to the rear suspension, so it would sag quite a bit in the back end. Went online and was reading about that, and in the year 2000 they used this linear spring here that just didn't quite have enough stiffness. I thought the issue was the shock absorber, but really it's just a wimpy spring was the issue. So in 2001 they went to this progressive spring, and you can see it looks different. Obviously this one's compressed because it's installed on the new shock that I bought. Funny story there, that was like the last shock absorber in the entire country. They're on back order, but I found a Polaris dealer out of Texas that had one. Paid a little more than I was hoping to. It was like $150, and I don't think I ended up actually needing the shock absorber. It was really the reason the back end sagged was because the spring just wasn't stiff enough. So you can see this is a progressive spring, so the coil winds are tighter up here. So once you compress the spring to a certain point, it becomes stiffer. And so I'm hoping that'll address the rear end sag on it. And I got that spring off of this here that I bought on eBay. It was used salvage part, and all I really wanted was the spring. This shock is bad. The oil or the seal is blown. You can see it doesn't recover. This was the shock that was on the unit, my dad's four-wheeler. It's a Bilstein here. You can see it actually, I think, is just fine. But whatever. I looked into returning this $150 shock, and I was gonna have to pay the return shipping, the shipping initially to get it to me, and then a 20% restocking fee. So that would have been about a third of the cost right there. So I just decided to keep it. And like I said, this is the drive shaft here. So this goes onto that stub on the back end of the motor transmission right there. This fits on that, goes inside the swing arm here. This side is in really good shape as far as the spline goes. U-joint bearings and so forth are good. My dad did do a little bit of maintenance. Any grease zerk he could find and get to, he would shoot some grease into. But this end here, this is again the end that ties with the coupling, and then the pinion goes in here like this. This went like this. See there. But even the condition on this, you can kind of see those splines aren't as bad as the pinion, but they're not perfect either. So I figured while I'm in here replacing all these parts, I found a brand new one again on eBay. Those splines, you can tell, are not rusted and are in real good shape. Went ahead and bought that. That was like $112 for that. So like I said, I got about $900 worth of parts into this. I had thought about cross drilling this pinion shaft here and putting this 180 KSI steel bolt in here and cross drill this coupling like that. Was real serious about going that direction, and then decided not to because the bolt head and nut wouldn't fit in here, and I would have had to take a Sawzall or in some way enlarge in this hole, and I just didn't really want to start butchering the swing arm up. And again, it's a sentimental piece, I guess I'd say, sort of. I kind of want to do it right. So, yeah, so I did manage to find a pinion. It was not easy. I found a pinion on eBay. It's brand new. So you can see it's that, I don't know how many teeth are on that, but anyway, bevel gear. They only made the bevel style pinion for 1 year, the year 2000, I believe. And after that, they went to straight cut gears for the pinion and ring. So it wasn't easy to find that, and it wasn't cheap either. I got it for $263, I think, plus tax, of course, on eBay now. And then, you know, I need this nut. I thought I could get that nut off and that bearing to reuse those two components. Unfortunately, that was not to be. I went to a Polaris dealer. They had the service manual on it, which since then I've actually bought the